everybody. Welcome back to the show, Science Dispatch Podcast. My name is Cameron English. I am your host, as always. Joined by Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein, Director of Medicine at the American Council on Science and Health, surgeon, just an all-around sharp guy, very thoughtful. Chuck, it's great to see you. How's it going?
Nice. It's going very well. Nice to see you too, Cam.
Ah, shucks.
Sure.
All right. We have a terrific article by our own Dr. Dinnerstein. It's a really interesting topic, too, because there's sort of an intersection here where there's some competing interests, let's say, in terms of medical topics. So this article is called, "Is the Keto Diet a Hack to Offset Psychiatric Medications Making Patients Fat?" Interesting stuff. Okay, here's your summary, Chuck, and then just take it away. So you write, "Are mental health meds making individuals gain weight faster then you can say side effects? The keto diet might just be the secret weapon to keep those pesky pounds at bay while managing bipolar or schizophrenia systems." Interesting. That's a clever proposition here, Chuck. So what's going on?
So we can also file this under "you are what you eat." And it turns out it's not just your body, but your brain. So the problem is that, and we're talking now about significant debilitating mental illness, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. These can be very disabling conditions. But we have a variety of medications that work fairly well at managing the symptoms if the patients will remain on them. But there's several difficulties in getting them to remain on them. Part of it has to do with because they have mental imbalances remembering to take them. That's one hurdle. But another hurdle is the fact that these medicines take away their joie de vivre in many cases and cause them to gain weight, and they just don't like to be on them. They may not like the symptoms of their other problems, but they don't find that the side effects of the medication are to their liking. So from a medical point of view, the neuroleptics, which is the name that we would use for these medications as a general group, lead to weight gain and dysregulation of glucose, which can cause their own problems. So the researchers looked at the literature and came by with several, what I found for me interesting because I'm not that in that particular area of medicine, findings and discussions. One is there's clearly a connection between the gut and our mental outlook. For example, people with irritable bowel syndrome are 3 times more likely to be depressed than other individuals. And yes, there's a reason to be depressed if you have irritable bowel syndrome, but there's a chicken and egg component to that. Some of that depression very well may be the alterations in your gut that are then fed up to your brain and make some changes. We also know that a keto diet, which is an Atkins diet, is basically a high protein, low carbohydrate diet in people with medication-resistant epilepsy has reduced their seizures. So now we have 2 pieces of evidence that that irritable bowel disease can cause mental symptoms, and the changing diet can improve our neurologic function with respect to seizures. So that they thought that there might be something worthwhile in looking at whether a keto diet had any effect on these other major psychiatric illnesses. So they did, and you got to stress this, a pilot study, just an exploration to see whether there was anything worthwhile to do a real study about. And so I'm reporting on the pilot. So they looked at 21 patients, predominantly people with bipolar disorder, several people with schizophrenia, all of them overweight, having gained weight on their neuroleptics, all had some kind of dysregulation of glucose or fat metabolism, again, from that. So they all were going to benefit from being on a ketogenic diet in terms of correcting their glucose and their fat, and a ketogenic diet would certainly reduce their weight. So there was a clear health benefit to it. They wanted to see what happened. So they placed them on a ketogenic diet for a 4-month period. So as you'd expect, what they found was that the average weight decreased, the blood pressure came down, the markers for inflammation came down, hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of glucose dysregulation, improved, and some of their fat metabolism numbers also improved. So clearly there was a health benefit. But what I found interesting is that 20% of them had an improvement in their symptoms that they self-reported during that period of time, which is pretty good for simply a diet. And objectively, there was a doubling of the number of people that were considered in recovery as compared to the baseline from using the diet. So as they wrote, taking together, our results show that a ketogenic diet intervention is a feasible and acceptable supplemental treatment to neuroleptic medications in the outpatient real world. Now, whether real world is hyperbole given the study of 21 patients, I would argue that it is. But I think that it's a very interesting paper, and it opens up a lot of fascinating things that we can talk about doing.
Oh, okay. So, well, yeah, I do have a young daughter, so that is a real possibility. I guess my typical question in a situation like this is next step. So you said the next step is a study. Is this real enough that you would set up a clinical trial? Or are we going to do some epidemiology now to see if there's a trend out there in the wider world? What happens?
I think if they got the money, they would go ahead and do a clinical trial, because it certainly is an ongoing problem. I don't know that there would be any way to do an epidemiologic study. So let's pause and talk about funding research. If you look at the bulk of a lot of research being done today, it's being done with databases that have been around for a long time. So they reflect research that has been funded in the past, or that is ongoing government surveys, so that there's not a lot of cost in terms of going out and surveying people and doing the food, analysis or whatever might be involved. So if you're talking about a de novo study of a ketogenic diet in people with schizophrenia and bipolar, you're not going to easily find a database that contains that. So you're going to be looking at the same kind of research costs to try and do a survey in the past as easily as setting up a new study and moving forward. Though it's going to be, funding is going to be significant, and it's going to be a project. Either way.
Nonetheless, this does seem promising. I don't have any direct experience with these conditions or medications, thankfully, but I do know someone who was diagnosed with one of them and was, at least the doctor said, I could prescribe this for you and it will improve the quality of your life. And this individual said, well, what are the side effects? The doctor said, well, it's quite likely that you'll gain a significant amount of weight and you might experience some erectile dysfunction. And, and again, like, these psychiatric conditions are very serious, but if you have to live your life with long-term consequences like that, it is a real question for someone to go, do I want to be overweight and have an issue that could affect my long-term relationships? These are real challenges.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So this at least sounds promising, like a very practical way to treat these potentially.
Right, and it's a pilot study, and they worked with a very motivated individuals, so they had a very high compliance with a ketogenic diet. And a ketogenic diet is not always the most friendly. It can give you problems of its own, but you're right. It really is a balance act. I was going to ask you whether it was the overweight or the erectile dysfunction that was the one that canceled the decision, because both of them would make a difference for a lot of people.
Well, that's what's interesting, right? Is like one or the other. I think a lot of people will go, well, I'll deal with that, but both together, alongside with other side effects that some people experience, it's a real challenge, I would imagine.
Oh, it absolutely is, and it's interesting. Those same side effects, how you balance that out will change for a variety of factors. ED is going to be a much bigger issue to a 20-year-old than a 60-year-old. Weight, for somebody like, that's just hanging out may not be as big an issue for one group over another. Weight may be, a game changer for women over men, just because of the way we culturally, judge women. So that's, I think, true across medicine all the time, that the part of the sale is explaining the side effects and seeing how well they fit in or don't fit in with the individual's lifestyle. Interesting point to bring up.
Yeah, well, and the thing, what that makes me think of, and maybe you can comment on this more broadly, is that in many cases with medicine, we're dealing with trade-offs, right? Because the way I've heard it put is a drug that's powerful enough to alter your mental state for the better is powerful enough to do something that you may not appreciate, right? Same thing with a vaccine in rare cases or any kind of pharmaceutical drug. And it seems like it's situations like this that really force us to grapple with that, to recognize that, it's very rare that you get a magic drug that does exactly what you want and nothing else. Or maybe that's never happened. I don't know. But maybe you have some thoughts on that.
No, everything comes with some side effects, and it's just a question of to what degree they are bothersome to you, or in your particular moment in time. And some side effects are invisible to us, so we don't notice them. The non-steroidals will alter our platelets and increase our bleeding possibilities. Tylenol, acetaminophen will have problems with our liver. So a lot of them are silent, so it just doesn't occur to us that they're there. But it's always that kind of trade. It's certainly easier to see that. I think it certainly was easier to see that with surgery, because surgery was a very clear temporal event. You did an operation, and anything good or bad that followed was as a result of the surgery, whether that was true or not. Whereas medications, side effects can take a while to creep up upon you. And so it's not as clear that, it's the medicine that's giving me this problem or that problem.
Very good. All right. Well, everyone go read this article. Really, really helpful stuff here, Chuck. Maybe it's the physician in you, but you tend to pick topics that are real practical and helpful for, someone needs to learn about something like this. It's great. I appreciate it. So once again, article is called, "Is the Keto Diet a Hack to Offset Psychiatric Medications Making Patients Fat?" And the answer, as it typically is here on this show, is maybe. We don't know yet. Go check out the article. Go check out the research behind it, and then dig a little deeper. Lots of good stuff on our website. There's a whole library, thousands upon thousands of stories from all sorts of people with different expertises. Follow us on social media. It's at ACSH.org, and then I am at CamJEnglish on Twitter. Send us your questions, comments. If you have an idea for the show, we'd love to hear it. And with that, we will see you all next time.